This month marks 10 years that I've been attending My Little Pony conventions. They are some of the most memorable adventures of my life, so I thought I'd take a walk down memory lane and go through the last decade of my experiences. I've been extremely lucky to have been able to attend so many of these. In fact, Everfree Northwest 2024 is my 20th horse convention total. As a silly blue horse obsessed with organization and logistics, I thought I'd divide the timeline into 3 distinct periods. To the very beginning we go at the start of what I'll call the Discovery period. Bronycon 2014 was my very first Brony convention. I was just barely able to legally do things on my own, and with very little independent travel experience, I tried to sell my parents on the idea of a family vacation to Baltimore. After all, I wasn't sure how long these would last, and I wanted to go to at least one. If I only knew. So while my parents did the standard tourist circuit around the city, my brother and I got to experience the wonders of Bronycon for the very first time. Highlights included buying my very first plushie, seeing Odyssey and Black Griffin perform live, and getting starstruck by so many internet personalities I'd been following over the preceding 3 years of being in the fandom. So much to do, so little time, I'd often forget to eat food. Remember folks, 621 isn't just good advice, but from personal experience, it's a necessity. By the time it was over, I had inundated myself with so much horse, I knew I was hooked. The wait was incredibly arduous and the post-con depression was real, but 1 year later we set out for Baltimore once again to attend Bronycon 2015. Despite some train mishaps along the way, myself, my brother, and my good friend Shaolays hit the ground running, said good morning Baltimore, and set out to do as many panels as humanly possible. Animating, voice acting, Bronies React, Hooves Line, musicians, oh, and John Delancey was at this one. I also stood in line for over 2 hours to attend the premiere of the much anticipated Ponies Anthology 5. We were out until the early morning hours to see legends perform. Folks you don't see much around the community anymore, like Eiley Monty, The Living Tombstone, Aviators, and more. And on our way back to our hotel, we took our lives into our own hands as we braved the downtown Baltimore streets after the sun went down. Just as memorable as the first, we watched the sun fade on the final day as post-con depression set in once again. Who knew if we would ever be back? Turns out, I would be. Interning in Washington, D.C. during the summer made for a much easier train ride to attend Bronycon 2016. This time, I'd be going it alone. At this point, I knew what to expect, but the scale was even more grand than previous years. This time, the whole cast of the main 6 were guests of honor, along with the mythical M.A. Larson. At this point, this show and fandom had fanned my flames of creativity such that I knew I wanted to make things, but I just didn't know what. I also didn't know how. Luckily, I had plenty of inspiration to draw upon. I could keep trying art, that seemed to be what I had the most experience doing. Music? Does my out-of-tune singing count? Comedy? Am I really all that funny? Don't answer that. Analysis? The analysis community was going full throttle in 2016, so maybe there was something there? But am I really all that smart? Certainly not. While the answer evaded me, I still had the most incredible time, and obtained even more plushies to adorn my dresser and art to adorn my walls. Summer of 2017 was a cause for celebration. I had just graduated college, so to treat myself, I ventured up by train once again to the fabled streets of Baltimore. Bronycon 2017 was my 4th in a row, and I had a pattern to maintain. Up until this point, I had mostly kept to myself. Despite the show instilling the principles of making friends, I had yet to muster up the courage to actually make Brony friends. This year was different. For the crippling introvert I was, and to a lesser extent still am, I eased my way into it. Met some folks to room with, we hung out off and on during the convention and kept in touch afterwards. Success, perhaps. Another prosperous convention, more plushies, more art, a fiery drive to find my place in the creative space, and a Discord server for friends. The discovery period was over, so begins the magic period. Because after all, friendship is, yeah, you get it. I was officially out on my own. New job, new home, new people, new con. Trotcon 2018 was my very first non-Bronycon convention. While significantly smaller, I found it very charming. It delivered in ways such a massive expo like the one held in Baltimore simply could not. Smaller, more personal setting. Room to breathe and explore, and the best part, I made more friends. I was now officially hooked on attending these conventions with friends. I gotta go to as many of these as I possibly can. Of course, I could stand to take a break from Bronycon. After all, they weren't planning on going anywhere. They said they were gonna follow through until the 2020s. Thus, I decided to go the opposite direction. This leads me to venture to Crystal Mountain Ponycon 2018 later that year, the last event held by this brand. I went to finally meet up with some friends I made online but had never met in person up until this point. While the convention wasn't quite as well organized as the ones I'd attended before, I still enjoyed myself. The largest shortcoming of the con, especially for archival reasons, is there was no con book and no badges. All I've got are my photos and my memories. It wasn't all negative, of course. There were some incredible highlights. I got to interact with Rebecca Shoykett one-on-one, which not many events would allow for, and had a wonderful conversation on what it means to be yourself. Standing on a gorgeous rooftop with Utah scenery in the background, listening to Everfree Brony perform his hit song, Love, with my good friends beside me, will forever live on in my memories. So long, CMPC, you'll be missed. Right before the end of such a fortuitous year, I am convinced by my friends to give another convention a shot, and I am so glad I did. This blue horse pivots and travels not east, not west, but north, to the great state of Wisconsin for Ponyville Ciderfest 2018. To this day, still my favorite annual event due to the outstanding organization, phenomenal programming, and of course, for the impeccable location. The theme that year was a music festival of epic proportions, and the lineup did not disappoint. The best part of it all, I met even more friends to enjoy the event with. Oh yes, this was a new era indeed. No longer shall I ever plan to attend a convention without friends by my side. Suddenly, disconcerting news. Our beloved Bronycon would be holding its last event in 2019, nearly coinciding with the end of our beloved show. This was a shocking turn of events to say the least. Coupled with my own personal life upheavals that year, the future looked uncertain. I was sure of only one thing. I had to be at that con, the one that started it all for me. That's exactly what I did. Along with all the friends I had made up to this point, we all descended upon Baltimore one final time for a 4-day-long pony extravaganza, the likes of which no pony had ever seen before or since. If they were going out with a bang, gracing us with the presence of the illustrious Lauren Faust and the matriarch of My Little Pony herself, Bonnie Zachary. The weekend was one for the ages. It went by in a whirlwind, nearly too quickly for comprehension. State of my poor con book should be indicative of that. Bronies from around the world found their way to this historic event. Memories were made, fun was had, plushies were thrown, nothing short of pure jubilation for 4 straight days. Yet in the blink of an eye, it was all over as soon as it began. My compatriots and I departed Baltimore for the final time ever. There was a light at the end of the tunnel. Ponyville Ciderfest 2019. The show may have been over, but for some strange reason the conventions were still going. This was a promising sign indeed. Again, my friends and I returned to the land of cheese curds and free-flowing beer to reorient ourselves for the future without friendship is magic. Games were played, art was purchased, wouldn't you know it, I met even more new people I'm happy to call my friends. I almost did push-ups in a big glass elevator. Please don't ask. This fandom was determined to keep the flame of community alive, and it showed no signs of stopping. That is, until the lost year. There's no need to further elaborate, of course, but we hung on by a thread. A lifeline, that is, online conventions. I am so grateful for these cons like Ponyfest Online, which pulled me even further into the realm of internet horsedom. Whether or not we all realized, the landscape was changing rapidly. By the time I was able to return to in-person conventions, there was some slight hesitation. Would I even recognize the community I'd grown to love so much after such an apocalyptic nightmare? I would find my answer at Ponyville Ciderfest 2021, the first con I attended post-COVID. Something did feel different, but what was it? We had G5, we were back in Milwaukee, our group was together again, we had all the ingredients, so why didn't it feel exactly the same as before? Whether it was the panels I attended, the vendors I purchased horse merchandise from, the musicians whose concerts I raved to, it was something intangible I felt. It did not deter me from having a glorious time celebrating the fact that we could all be together again. In fact, it made me determined to attend even more so I could identify this peculiarity that I felt in my dumb horse brain. A couple months later, my friends and I found our way back to Ohio for Trotcon 2021. It was my largest friend gathering since Bronycon. It made for a very special weekend indeed. During this event was when I got an inkling for the answer I'd been chasing since I'd been able to return from the depths of isolation and quarantine. The community seemed to be lighter, in a sense, as if the excess fat had been trimmed off. No longer were we in the spotlight as a meme fad or the next trendy internet phenomenon. Now, the only people who were left were the ones who truly wanted to be here. I never realized until so long after, but a mass exodus seemed to occur between the ending of the show and the shutdown of the entire world. We may have been reduced to a smaller number, but we were still mighty. Flash forward to 2022, a year that would be replete with new experiences, including several new conventions like Whinny City Ponycon. My attendance was one of magnificent convenience. I just so happened to be in the area for work reasons, so I made a point to stop in. I was delighted to find it was a laid-back atmosphere, one of less hectic pacing. It truly felt like a cozy summer getaway amidst the chaos. I only wish I could stay longer. I did come away with another piece of the puzzle. The change wasn't so much in the fandom, the change was with me. I'd finally started to realize who I was as a person and what I wanted to do with myself. It only took years of looking for the answer, but I was finally comfortable and confident enough to meet face to face with some of the people who had inspired me all those years ago. Better late than never, right? Finally satisfied with the answer to the nagging question in the back of my pea-sized brain, I set off to Trotcon 2022 with a new perspective. G5 guests of honor filled this lineup, as it seemed like the sun had come out on a new era with endless possibilities. Columbus offered that same quirky, scuffed charm we had all grown to love over the years. This latest edition came with 225% more pool frisbee, which is always a good thing. I settled into my usual pattern, socialized with my dear friends, buy art, convinced myself I didn't need any more plushies, cave and buy one anyway, you know, the usual. It was a wondrous time, capped off with the unexpected announcement that the convention would be moving cities the next year. As stated before, change was certainly upon us. Continuing this busy year was my first ever pilgrimage to the land of Seattle for my first ever Everfree Northwest. This con was the closest I had felt to experiencing that Bronycon magic from years before. It balanced the line beautifully between catering to the veterans and the newcomers, names I recognized and names that I certainly needed to get up to speed on, coupled with the gorgeous setting and of course my friends who'd stuck with me all this time, not to mention the food. The food near this venue is unrivaled, so great. Historically, I'd never been much of a signature guy, but this year gave me the opportunity to meet the great Vincent Tong. After a magical conversation, he bestowed upon me my very first guest of honor signature, just about 8 years after I had started going to conventions in the first place. The pandemic certainly set me back on my social skills, but I'm getting there, just be patient, please. To close out such a memorable year, the gang returns once again to our all-reliable Ponyville Ciderfest. Never has there ever been a Ciderfest I didn't enjoy, and this year was no different. My close friends ran a panel, something absolutely brand new from our friend group, and it went swimmingly. We also decided to go on a little adventure away from the venue to do some rock climbing. My lack of athleticism was painfully obvious in that regard. The fall festival was ripe with merriment. The concerts ran long into the night. Comedy, intrigue, introspection, Milwaukee had it all. I mustered up the courage to meet some of the musicians and YouTubers I long admired, but an even bigger surprise awaited me after closing ceremonies. It would seem a fandom personality I'd been a fan of for some time happened to be familiar with my scruffy little YouTube channel, and it left me in a state of what I can only describe as the human equivalent of a Windows blue screen. I had no idea how to respond to being dealt this psychic damage other than to thank them profusely probably too many times and demonstrate my true lack of social acuity. Bewilderment and personal embarrassment aside, this begins the next period in my decade-long journey of pony conventions, the contribution period. 2023 kicks off with an explosive new convention to me, Harmonycon. After consuming both In-N-Out Burger and Whataburger in a single weekend, it was time for us to see what all the buzz was about regarding these Texan ponies. My impressions of this phenomenal event is that this is where you can really see the fandom grow. I came to learn of an entirely new realm of pony content creators flourishing right under my horse nose. There was a vibrant, vivacious spirit I had not yet seen before, and it was overflowing down here in Dallas. Even in 2023, there were new fans of My Little Pony, and I was pleasantly dumbfounded. I don't think I've ever met so many new friends in such a short amount of time than during this weekend in February. Not only that, but I was fortunate enough to be invited to be a part of the programming for the first time ever, and I will forever be grateful for the opportunity. Thank you to Harmonycon, it was an experience I will not soon forget. Everfree Northwest 2023 marks another watershed moment for me, since someone in the programming staff made the unfortunate decision to let me host a panel for the first time ever. I'm just kidding, I am again so thankful for the opportunity, and I was lucky to be working with some of the fabulous folks I had met at Harmonycon earlier in that year. If I thought the weekends went by quickly before, then someone hit the turbo, because I couldn't begin to elaborate on how many meaningful interactions and remarkable moments I experienced. My trusty friends by my side, we took the Pacific Northwest by storm. I rambled about Applejack, stumbled over my words about YouTube, saw a giant tornado of guitars, and wore my ridiculous horse mask for far too long. I am pretty sure I lose brain cells every time I don that cursed thing, but it's not like I have much to lose in the first place. Anyway, ramen is delicious, Everfree Northwest is dope, I love my friends, and to that one musician, I'm deeply sorry for pestering you for a photograph while you were on your way to the bathroom. You know who you are. My bad. We're nearly there now, folks. I haven't missed a Ciderfest yet, and I'm not planning to anytime soon. My small-time horse YouTubers panel makes its grand debut on a small stage, to which I couldn't be happier since I'm still working out all the kinks. I was able to be among the first audience ever for possibly the greatest idea ever conceived, the Great Panel Randomizer. Incredibly 18+ adult jokes were made, concerts were once again off the chain, an earth-shattering $100,000 was raised and donated to charity, I still struggle to climb rocks and beat my crippling art addiction, Potbelly was consumed almost too many times, not a single dull moment, and all of it spent with wonderful friends. This brings us to the last convention before reaching the 10-year mark, Whinny City Ponycon 2024, possibly my busiest convention ever to date. We ate some delicious Chinese pastries, Chicago-style hot dogs, and deep dish pizza. I was introduced to some highly underrated animated films. I did not get lost on Chicago public transit. I hosted what I feel to be the most successful iteration of small-time horse YouTubers to date. That's right, I finally figured out what the heck I'm doing for that. I had the incredible luck and good fortune to be invited onto 6 additional panels. I once again thank the hosts for the tremendous opportunity, and I thank all of you for watching these silly videos and allowing me to work with the talented individuals in this community I've been so blessed to have been able to work with. The journey from an awkward, bright-eyed, barely adult to slightly less awkward blue horse has been a decade in the making. If you've never been to a pony convention, I'd highly recommend it if you have the chance. To say they changed my life would be an understatement. I am not planning to stop either. I have even more things planned for future conventions, and I hope to continue to entertain, make you laugh, or at least exhale through your nose a little bit, and make dumb horse jokes for years to come. Thank you all for joining me on this trot down memory lane, and I hope to see you all at the next one.